All right, so Recruit Copilot, build your own ATS. This is part 5. And I think we're going to close out this current build here. If you actually do want to see more in the future, or you want me to go down different avenues that you're going up against, please just reach out. All the contact details are available in the description. And I would love to hear if you actually do go through this process yourself and build something. But what I want to focus on today is the walkthrough of exactly what we have built so far. Now, since the last video, what I've spent the time doing is actually building out the backend. So there's two parts to that. There's essentially a backend server which holds all of the functions that we're going to use. And the reason for that is that we can actually store that centrally, and that's going to interact directly with our database. And so we actually don't want to put any of the information on the front end, which is rendered in the browser, which means that anyone that needs to get anything from the browser can actually just open up a console and actually find what they need. But we actually want to gate everything that we're sending. So this backend server essentially acts as our gate and only allows you as the user to see what you've been given the privileges to access. And so the big part of that process was adding this sign-in page, which is going to prevent anyone from logging in and doing whatever they want with our server. My recommendation is to use Django for this because it's got all of this stuff already kind of built and ready to go. So many plugins, it's been used for decades, and that's really going to kind of manage all of that backend process for you. I actually run one Django server for many different front-end applications and demos and experiments that I run. I just like having that centralized location. So you have your database, which for this is using a local Postgres database. I decided not to try and build out anything in the cloud for now because this is not something that I'm actually pushing into production. That's then connected to the Django database, and that Django backend then connects to our front end, and the front end is what we see here, and that's where most of the work has gone because we want to make sure that we're giving all of our recruiters a good user experience. And what I would actually want to do from here is actually use this tool in action and start to gather feedback and make notes of anything that's blocking, anything that's not efficient, see how people use it, and then take that feedback and each week just run a mini update on what you've built so that over time you're actually gradually getting better and better. This means you don't have to have the perfect solution on day one, but you can actually build this up and create the ideal ATS that is very specific to you and your workflow and not necessarily something that you're going to buy off the shelf. Probably also saves a lot of money in kind of the reduced software spend. But I think the main reason we want to do this is because we want to build something that is unique to what we want. So let's sign in here and we'll see where we get to. So you'll see that not a lot seems to have changed here. And that makes sense because we've spent all of the time actually just wiring up and plumbing up all the backend stuff. But actually what I want to do right now is walk you through the whole process of actually operating this applicant tracking system. And so we land on the desk, and the desk is going to be completely clear unless there's something that needs our attention. So we're a recruiter, we're an agency owner, we're a hiring manager, we're going to access this, and we need to know instantly what do we need to care about, what do we need to kind of work through. And so this is kind of our to-do list. And what we're going to do is actually walk through some of these examples. So the first one is scorecards and how the candidates can't actually advance through the process until we've completed the scorecards. So when we click through here, and this is actually looking at the database, this is not just rendering some dummy data on the front end. We can see here that we have all these candidates, and these three are incomplete, and so they're actually stuck in the stage that they're currently at. And so what we're going to do is actually go through and click through to Ivan Petrescu. And what we can see is that this pulls up a sheet at the side. And so this was designed so that we could actually do everything from one page and actually drill down if we need to. And so what we can see here is that we actually haven't found an example of this, and we don't have entries for the other two areas that we care about. And so if we actually want to advance this person from a screening call to a competency call, we actually can't. It fields an error, and we've made this verbose so it actually tells us what the error is. I think over time, we'd probably cut down the amount of text that we're getting back and actually just give one-word answers. So we're going to quote the source, and when we go into here, so we know manage a team of 3 or more, we're going to say, okay, sits on the steering group. So we'll assume that tells us that he's actually advanced there. And then when we go back to his candidacy now, we can advance to a competency call, and we want to send the screening call message. So this is connected to our email account, and this is making sure that the candidate knows that we've advanced them along in the process. And this is one of the things that we probably want to put in place so that we make sure that we stay on top of our candidate experience and they know exactly what's going on at each stage in the process. And so once we've set that out, we can actually finally advance into the competency call. And then when we go back to our desk, we can see that Ivan is now onto the competency call there. Scorecard is still incomplete because we actually didn't capture any data from that first step, but that's not holding up the advancement of his candidacy now, which is going to be really important to making sure that we kind of keep all the pipelines moving. And now we're going to take a look at one of the other candidates. So here we've got a signal that Stefan may have been a duplicate against a previous candidate that we screened. And this is important because we don't want to be sending the same candidate to the same hiring manager if they've already rejected them. Maybe they've rejected them for a different role, or we're actually potentially pitching the same candidate to two different competitors. And as an agency, that actually might cause us some problems. And so what we want to do is actually find out if any of those issues are potentially going to crop up. And we have the check in place on the ATS that we built to allow us to do that. So we can check this as a duplicate candidate, record what we found, and we say, okay, this was, silver medalist from prior role. And so that gives us that confidence that, this person got most of the way through our process. And so we're surfacing them again because they're potentially a strong candidate for this new role that we found. We're going to record that. And then when we go back to the desk, we can see that Stefan has now dropped out of that kind of must do. And that's updated the database. And so when we kind of come back in and log in tomorrow, we're not going to see that same issue crop up again. Okay, next one, we're actually going to look into this management accountant role, and we can see that we actually can't open this role right now. The reason we can't open it is because we need 3 criteria, and this is one of the requirements we set when we built up the ATS, and we've actually embedded a lot of our kind of core beliefs and values in how this should run. So this is actually going to be a hard friction point, which is helpful if we're hiring new and less experienced recruiters who we want to follow along on this process. And we can actually use this as a quality control marker and make sure that we're not kind of skipping over parts of the process that we believe are important. And so when I click open this role, it says we need 3, Brief only has 2. So we'll add the 3rd criterion here. And this is just something that we are using as a demo here. And we're going to find out if they've run this process on the screening call. And so now it's in draft, we click open the role, and this role is now fully open because we've gathered that data. We know we have these 3 criteria that we can use then to score someone against. We're going to do all this in the screening call, and then we're going to be able to start moving candidates through. So again, we go back to the desk, and now we are down to just 3. I think we're going to ignore the rest of the scorecards. But I think what's really helpful now is actually taking a look at the sourcing. So when we do sourcing runs, we actually capture the runs in the database. We're not going to necessarily capture all the candidates if we haven't moved them into our ATS, but we can actually see if we're actually seeing these candidates kind of crop up here. We're going to go back to the desk and look at George Amakwa, and we're going to look at this candidate that we had submitted, and looks like they were hired, they're on probation. Probation ends 20th of August, which when I'm recording this is 5 days ago, but based on the kind of historic data, but all we want to do here is this is kind of triggering us to go back and look at how candidates landed. And so when we click record the feedback, we can actually say, what did the hiring manager say? And then if we were to hire for this kind of role again, what would we do differently? And this is our way of kind of capturing information and continuously improving. But because this is all being captured in our database, in the future, we can actually start to incorporate some feedback mechanisms, potentially using some AI to actually help us with that. That's going to give us a way to improve over time. And so you can see we're already starting to embed some of these concepts that we believe are important as we're running this recruiting process. And so we kind of keep improving. We stay on top of our candidates that we've placed. We stay on top of our pipeline, and we can actually dig in, to the weeds on what's going on. But the desk is really where we kind of go in and kind of set up our example of what we want to do day to day. And so what we're going to do now is kind of wrap this up with kind of a summary. The key thing to remember here is the database is within a secure location, so nobody can access that database unless they have the permissions. That's gated by the backend that we have built out, and that's now secure because we have login credentials. And then the front end is the thing that we're probably going to play around with the most, because that's going to give us the ability to improve workflows, to actually manage candidate flows better, to flag information to us and make sure that we're staying on top of everything. And so you can see here now we've gone from potentially having multiple tabs open where we have We have an Excel sheet, we have a notepad, we have to-do lists, we have Asana boards, we have LinkedIn and everything else. If we can do almost everything within one tab, and we can gradually build that up over time to try and ask, if we've got something else open and some other tool, can we actually develop that into the system that we're using ourselves, so that we can streamline the whole recruiting process. If you did like this series and you want me to keep going with this build out, please drop me a note. We did actually put a sign up, so if you actually want to buy something like this in the future, we could potentially build that out into something that's a little bit more production grade. Or if you actually just want to learn a little bit more about how to do this kind of AI vibe coding approach, but actually with guardrails in place, more specific to HR or TA, we actually could potentially build a course out for that. This is really just a sample of what you could potentially do, and just as a walkthrough of something that I thought was a little bit fun to run over the summer. So I hope that was helpful. Keep an eye out for the next videos that are coming up. We're going in a slightly different direction with some deep dive technical analysis walkthroughs, and I'll see you then.